Hi, this is Andy. There comes a point at which leaders realize they have the opportunity to give back, to volunteer or mentor or somehow share what they've learned to help benefit others. I've yet to talk with someone who thought volunteering is a bad idea. I mean, more often what I hear is, oh, yeah, I'd love to volunteer more, but, I'm just too busy. Maybe sometime in the future. Perhaps you can relate to that. I mean, there's a great need for the skill sets that project managers and frontline leaders have. We agree that it's important to do, yet in many ways, we're among the busiest of people. Well, in today's discussion, we're talking about volunteering. I'm so glad to welcome Yasmina, Khelifi, and Mayte Sivera. They're co-authors of a new book entitled The Volunteering Journey to Project Leadership, a pathway to improving leadership skills, broadening networks, and exploring new fields. Just from the subtitle, you can tell this book is not just a call for giving back. By the time we're done today, you'll see that volunteering benefits both you and those you are serving. And the result is a win-win that I'm hoping will cause you to consider how you can take the next step in volunteering. I can't wait to share this discussion with you. A quick note, I want to invite you to join our Lead 52 family. It's a global group of leaders who are committed to transforming our ability to lead and deliver. It's 52 weeks of leadership learning delivered right to your inbox, taking less than 5 minutes a week. And it's all for free. Learn more and sign up at getlead52.com. Thanks. Let's jump into today's discussion with Yasmina and Mayte about their new book, The Volunteering Journey to Project Leadership. Hey, ladies, thank you for joining us on the People and Projects podcast.
Thank you, Andy, for having us.
We'll get to some ideas from the book in just a bit, but let's start with each of you. How would you describe your current role and maybe a brief summary of the journey to get there? Yasmina, let's start with you.
Yes, so I'm a senior project manager in an international company in France near Paris. And I am sure a lot of your listeners are going to relate to that. I am an accidental project manager. A good manager proposed to me to apply for becoming a project manager. And that's how I am today. I passed also my project management certification, PMP, in 2013. And I began to volunteer in 2018.
Yeah. Mayte, what was your journey, or how do you describe your role and what was your journey?
So nowadays I am a project management director or PMO leader in the direct sales industry. As Yasmina, we share something similar. I'm a project manager by accident. I'm the first generation that went to college. I did chemical engineering. I'm an engineer. I have a master's degree. But just when I finished the career, I get a job offer to start learning and doing business analysis in one of the top 10 companies at that point in technology. So I started my career in Spain and doing business analysis, and I finished like a project manager. I moved to Utah about 10 years ago, and is where I developed professionally as a PMO leader.
I don't remember hearing the story of how the two of you met. Mayte, how did you meet Yasmina? Where did that happen?
So we met through an online community related for project managers. Both of us were very engaged on that community, and we realized that we share a lot of things in common. We share some of our passions. Both of us love to write. Both of us are volunteer, but we are not volunteering in the traditional way that most of the people volunteer. We are more focused on projectized organizations. So one of those days, Yasmina pinged me and said, hey, what if we have a chat? And from the chat, we did a podcast together. We wrote a few articles. We did webinars, and our relationship grow and grow and grow.
I love it. It's a great story. Your stories are so good because we talk a lot on the podcast of how very rarely, in fact, I've never heard someone say, like in elementary school, someday I want to be a project manager. you either go business analysis or you're some other route, engineering or some route, and then all of a sudden you do really well, and people go, "Oh, could you run a project?" And then you run into people who are like-minded, and then you collaborate. It's a wonderful story, and Mayte, in the introduction, I talked about how we all tend to agree volunteering is a good idea, right? No one will disagree with that. But there's so many competing priorities and other interests. So What's one of the first ways you volunteered in a professional context and an example of what you learned from that early volunteering experience?
So all started when I moved to the United States. I didn't know anyone here.
Mhm.
So I finished my first job as a project leader here, I was a little lost. It's like I don't know anyone. I cannot find a community where I belong. So what I did is, and at the same time, I was trying to get my PMP certification, and I felt so alone. So what I looked for was for communities where I can practice my skills as a project manager and also learn more about project management and be engaged with the project management community. So those two places that I volunteer, first one was for the TEDx local event, TEDx Salt Lake City, where they needed a project manager to put the event,
Sure.
making the event happen. And the other one was a PMI Northern Utah chapter because I was trying to get my PMP certification. So, and I love to write. So they asked me to write in their newsletter. So there were my two first things. And truly, it was a juggle a bit at the beginning because at the same time I found a job and it's like my job, my family, two volunteer opportunities. So that's what I early learned from both experiences is that we need to analyze our time commitment.
Mhm.
It means we really need to think about it. Yes, I want to do that. That's what I want to accomplish in this volunteer opportunity, but also be transparent about what is the time that I am willing to commit.
I love that story because there's so many reasons why you could have said, "Oh, I'm too busy for TEDx," or um, I mean, you could have said, "Well, English is not my first language. I'm not going to write in that." Right? You could have used all those as excuses, but you what you learned was if you prioritize your time, you would have time for it. Yeah, that's great. Yasmina, how about you?
Yes, it's a bit close and common to Maite. First, I come, here in France, volunteering is not so valued at university or at work, probably less than in United States, in fact. So when I got my PMP in 2013, I remember the teacher there, the tutor, told us, yes, you have to go and volunteer at the local chapter. You are going to meet a lot of people to learn a lot. I didn't listen to it at all because for me, I thought, okay, free time, people, it's a lot of things probably. It's free. What I'm going to do? It's not possible to do this kind of things. But, in life, a lot of things happens and changes. And in 2018, I think I was quite in a stressful situation at work. And I felt I needed something more. I needed to be involved in communities, to meet other people. And then I remember this sentence from 2013 and I began to volunteer. But when I began to volunteer, I do it like I do at work. I am a passionate person. So I began to give a lot of advice to say, why don't you do this? Why don't you think we have to have more followers on LinkedIn? Etc., etc. And you imagine how people reacted. They said, well, what's this? In fact, it's not our priority at the moment. So first, we also tried in the past. It didn't work. So I think my key takeaways from this first experience is not to be too quick, to bring changes and to be humble, also to accept to learn because I was volunteering with volunteers who were volunteering for ages also. So that's my lesson learned of this first
That's
experience.
so good. I've often said I never knew more about parenting than before I had children. and what I mean by that in this context is when I'm brand new to a project, I have simple answers to complex problems, right? And it's like, well, just do this, but what you have to learn and see the context and how quickly are people willing to make changes and understand those subtleties. And that's a really good lesson. I feel like a lot of the pitches for volunteering is about giving back, which is a good thing for sure. But you make it clear that the benefits aren't just for those we serve as volunteers, that we benefit as well. So, Yasmina, what are some ways that volunteering has helped develop you as a leader?
Yes, first, I want to highlight that you can volunteer to give back. And that's okay. You don't need to say, I'm going to volunteer to learn something, I'm going to have a strategy. In fact, but what I discovered is by volunteering, I have learned a lot of things and I have met also a lot of people. And if I recall my first volunteering experience, I have discovered diversity in communication styles. I work in a very diverse enterprise, in an international enterprise. So I know diversity from cultures, countries, different bank holidays, etc. But diversity from in background is also important. I am an engineer and I work with engineers. And we have a certain way of communicating. And when I was responsible I was in a communication team as a volunteer, and I was responsible for the communication of a coming forum. And what I did an Excel file with all the parameters to know history, who is going to be responsible, my question. And I sent this Excel file to a communication director. She was also a volunteer. Let's call her Susan. And when she got the file, she told me, I'm sorry, I cannot think with Excel. Let's talk together. To know how we can organize, etc. And for me, it was a discovery because I thought, okay, it's easy. I send the file, like I do at work. And if questions, don't hesitate to call me. So I think after I could also, I discovered also at work, I could translate this also to explain how I communicate, how to work with me for dummies, for example, and also to try to listen and to understand how people communicate. Can communicate in the different styles.
Yeah, that's a really good lesson. Mayte, how about you?
So in my case, I really love that question because I did a few interviews to apply for volunteer positions, and nobody asked me something like that. So I was at the TEDx event, and the person that was interviewing me said, "No one does anything altruistic. So why do you want to volunteer here?" And I was like, oh my gosh, she got me. I really want to meet people. And I was super transparent. It's like, I just moved to Utah. I don't speak very well English. I need to be exposed to more diversity. So if I can help you and you can help me, then is when I start all this process thought about, yes, I can volunteer for different reasons, but this person opened really my eyes. She was conscious that if we're going to give time, she was expecting to that we get something, because from her point of view, we will do it with we will invest more time, we will have more joy, because there was a poor win-win relationship. It was not only to check a box. So that really opened my eyes. During all these 6 years that I volunteered for that organization, one of my biggest learnings was the change of mindset from doing to leading. So I realized after experimenting in this volunteer setting, I work with different kind of team members, different kinds of personalities, a lot of diversity, that I was being kind of bossy. It means I had this old mindset of a manager more than a leader. So having this opportunity to experiment with different people, as Yasmina mentioned, diversity of mindset, cultural background, that helped me to try different styles, to try to find myself as a leader, and after apply that to my role in my day-to-day job. It means it was an eye-opener, because I'm the typical person that if you told me you need to do that, I make it happen. I make things happen. But sometimes as a Hispanic here, I came very passionate. So this change of mindset from individual contributor until leading a team of volunteers is one of my most valuable things that I learned. This change of mindset.
It's so interesting because there is a philosophical debate about does altruism exist, right?
Yeah.
And I think of it sometimes as a motivation. Like my motivation is first and foremost maybe to give back, but it also comes back. But regardless, it is an interesting question of the why. And I think from some of my volunteering experiences, something that's helped me is, and maybe both of you can relate to this, is project managers need to learn how to influence without authority. And when you're volunteering, you don't have the authority.
That's correct. That's 100% agree with that. We don't manage people. We cannot influence in their bonus, paycheck, time off. So we really need to learn how to do it.
Yeah. And you could argue in some ways that every employee on our project teams is a volunteer. They're getting paid, but they're volunteering their effort, they're volunteering their attention, their passion, and so learning to do that not just at work but also in other ways. I think it develops as leaders. I think it's one of the biggest points in your book that is easily overlooked. So and yet there's more. For example, one of the lessons you learn over time is the importance of relationships. And Yasmina, what's an example of how volunteering has helped you develop relationships that benefited you in your career?
That's a good question. I'd like to say I'm not sure it benefits me in my career, but what volunteering helped me is to network better. First step. Because I was not good at all at networking, the whole small talk, in fact, and by volunteering, by taking part, participating in events with other volunteers, I could observe how they did. Usually I sat next to experienced volunteers and they introduced me to other people and I felt more relaxed and with more self-confidence. And what I do now at work when we have a lot of virtual meetings, like probably many of your listeners, and at the beginning, I was just waiting without talking or doing other things in emails. Now, I try to ask people some questions to know what they are doing. Sometimes it looks perhaps a bit strange, but I think it's important because it's a way to learn to really build true relationships with people. So that is one thing I have learned through volunteering.
I like it. Yeah, that's good. Mayte, how about you?
Yeah, it's almost the same than Jasmina. It means it's you can practice how to network. For me, I have a very nice story. As I mentioned before, moving to the US is not a walk in the park. It means moving to another country with another language. It's very challenging. So one of my challenges when I moved here was to find a job opportunity. So my resume always got stuck in the human resources screening call because nobody was able to understand me. When they realized that I have this strong accent, it's from Spain, the strong accent, they were scared sometimes. It's like, I'm sorry, I cannot understand you. I'm not going to pass your resume to the hiring manager. So I was devastated because resume after resume, I was rejected. What I really learned is the importance of relationships. So I met Aaron through, he's my friend now, but he was a volunteer like me for PMI. And he know how valuable I was, how I was a good volunteer, a great project manager. He was like, I cannot understand how you don't pass the human resources phase. So there was this opportunity in his company, and he said, hey, we are hiring. I'm going to put your resume in front of the hiring manager. So that was huge for me. That was like, that really showed me the power from going from simply networking to a creative relationship with someone that can save your life. It means I was almost 1 year without job. And thanks to Aaron, I had the job that I have now. It was incredible experience that he saw my value and he put the resume in front of the hiring manager because I was 100% sure that I was not going to pass through the human resources screening first call, and that's challenging when you are an immigrant.
Yeah, I mean, we all know that we're more likely to get hired if somebody knows us. Otherwise, you're just a resume or you're just a resource. But I hear people say all the time, especially when they move somewhere, like, "How do you meet people? Where do you go? How do you do that?" And volunteering is a great way. And then someone sees your professional skills and they see how effective you are. You never know where that lives. I am amazed the older I get how small the world is. Right? And then all of a sudden you meet this person who introduces you to someone else, and volunteering is a great way to do that. And yet there's even more. I mean, you stress how volunteering develops learning agility. I thought that was interesting in the book, how you stress that. So what's an example of how you've seen volunteering accelerate your personal development?
Yeah, I love this question. And at the same time, it's very challenging because I can write a full memoir about all the things that I learned and share experiences with you. But if I really need to select one, what I believe is that volunteer exposed me to different communities, industries, and helped me to develop a more agile mindset. For me, it was always I do A, I complete B and I go to C. However, when you are in this kind of environment, for example, trying to make an event and it's outdoors and it starts raining and you don't know where to put 3,000 people, this problem solving skill set and agility that you never thought that you were able to do and having fast reactions, it helped me a lot. And that's something that I'm applying in my daily jobs, knowing that, yes, I can take decisions fast. I can increase my problem solving. And as I mentioned before, I really can be talking a full hour about all these little details and going to the with each experience, how much they give to me.
That's so true. Yasmina, how about you?
Yes, for me, volunteering was a big surprise and a good surprise because I could dare to try new things. So if see, if we go back to childhood, when I was at school, we had drawings lesson. You have to draw a painting to imitate a painting, and I had really bad marks on it. It was not so important, but for me it was the marks. And my sister had always good marks. So my deduction, my conclusion was, you have to be gifted to do this. And that's all. You don't need to learn, you are gifted, and you have kind of fixed mindset on this ability, That's all that is set in stone. And when I began to volunteer in one of the teams, the graphic designer left. And I said, okay, perhaps I can help. There is a software with a lot of templates, and perhaps we can customize templates. But even thinking like this for me was a big step because, I had a lot of barriers in my head. And before that, at work, when we had presentations, I put the content and I sent to my colleagues because we work in a very collaborative environment and it is rare I do my presentation alone, so we do together. So I send to colleagues and I say, okay, please review the design because, I'm not good at designing things. And I had always this voice in my brain, but thanks to volunteering, because of benevolent feedback and support from the team, I really gained confidence in designing things. And now at work, I can try different things and I think I have improved. So for me, it was really a big discovery, and also it helped me also at work to try to do different things, not necessarily with my abilities of project management, but to try different things, in communication, also things I will never have tried before volunteering.
Yeah, that's so true. I feel like you develop resilience by being in stressful situations, right? You develop confidence by stretching yourself, and it's easy to get complacent and, get used to what we do. And yet our growth, our personal development can really accelerate. I think that's an important point in your book that a lot of us don't think of. So let's say people listening to us all over the world, they're like, okay, I'm convinced I need to do more volunteering. So what do you do to start? Yasmina, what do you think?
Well, I would say start small. Because I'm a member and a volunteer in different chapters, and I have seen sometimes some people, they said, okay, I'm going to be a board member. Well, that's great. They are elected, but it doesn't work. Why? Because they didn't evaluate properly the expectations and also the workload. Because even if you are a volunteer, you have things to do. You cannot say, okay, sorry, I'm busy this week, and next week also I'm busy. Well, let's do it in 1 month. No, especially if you are a board member, we expect some feedback, we expect some direction, some guidance, some strategy. And I have seen some board members, they became bottlenecks, in fact, and they still remain on the board. So I think it's important to start small and not necessarily to look for big titles. In fact, I am a contributor as a volunteer, and I enjoy it very much because I can learn different things, and it is my choice to be a contributor. So I think start small and evaluate properly the expectation and the workload, as Mayte said at the beginning of our conversation.
Yeah, that's good. Mayte, what do you think?
I fully agree with Jasmine. It means the best way, if you are new to an organization, you need to start small. You start small, you learn about the teams, you learn about the organization, and that helps you a lot. However, something that I always say is find something that brings you joy. It means volunteer should not be another line in your to-do list. Here in the United States, there are a lot of companies that offer you volunteer time. So take advantage of that. It's not only something I need to go to the meeting. I need to. Is I want to. For me, it's completely different. That I need to do something that I want to. I want to organize an event. I want to help in a shelter, in a dog shelter, to create a new program for dog robbers. I want to. It's a huge difference, and it's not only for you that you feel that passion and that joy. It makes a lot of difference also for the organization that you are giving your time. So start small, as Yasmina said, but find always something that brings you joy.
Great advice. What's one of your favorite moments from your experience volunteering this far? I mean, just a moment that reinforced this is so important. Mayte, let's start with you.
So I think that all started when I realized that I can work with people with different backgrounds. So being a project manager, you are always in this kind of bubble that most of us have the same interest, the same ways of working, and the same things. When I volunteered for the TEDx event, I was working from people from finance, a tarot reader. I was working with someone in marketing. Each of us had a different mindset, different ways to do the things. And there was this point in a meeting that we were like, it's impossible that we reach an agreement. One is white, the other is Latino. I came from Spain and I don't understand half of the things that you are seeing right now or what that you are showing. What is that? Cultural difference matters a lot. But at that point, after half hour of discussions, all of us reached an agreement. It's super cool. I realize how doesn't matter where you come from. If the goal is the same for all the team, we can make it happen. That was an amazing experience for me.
That's a great story. Yasmina, how about you?
It's a great question and a challenging one because there are so many moments. So what I remember is when we presented with a volunteer friend a webinar in a women's community about imposter syndrome. And first, what I loved is, I met Vicky, I presented with Vicky, and I met her through volunteering because she talked about imposter syndrome. I said, okay, that's interesting. Why not having a webinar? And I love these magic moments. And then we created the webinar, we presented to women's community, we had a lot of positive feedback. It was very emotional during the 1 hour. And that is what I love. Like Mayte said at the beginning, how we met, I think it's incredible, because it's through a community, we made podcasts, articles, and we work on the book 1 year, in fact, before really meeting face to face last year in the United States. So this is a kind of magical things, and when I told, Andy and all your listeners, project manager working in companies, perhaps it's very obvious for all of us, to work like this virtually. But when I tell people who are not project manager in my family or to my friends, they are very surprised. They said, how can you do this? In fact, but I think that's the magical part of volunteering.
Yeah, that's so good. If a listener wanted to follow up with you, where's the best place for them to contact you, Yasmina?
LinkedIn, in fact.
Yeah. And Mayte, how about you?
Same for me. I'm very active in LinkedIn, and maybe now I'm in a peak of work and volunteer things going on. But at some point, I always answer the messages. And unless you're trying to sell me something, that you have these solicitors going in your LinkedIn profile. But if you really want to learn more about volunteer or how you can give back and at the same time learn something, I will answer as soon as I can.
Yeah, that's good. Well, for those listening, if you like the idea of volunteering more, but would like some ideas on how to get started, get a copy of Mayte and Yasmina's new book, The Volunteering Journey to Project Leadership. I put links to the book as well as their LinkedIn profiles in the show notes of this cast. So Yasmina and Mayte, thank you so much for joining us on the People and Projects podcast.
Thank you very much. Merci.
Thank you, Andy. Gracias.